Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. I'm live on both Instagram and Facebook again, looking into two different cameras. So just waiting for a few of you to join. Good morning. Good morning. Big topic today, kids. We'll see if we can all keep up, but I'm very passionate about it. So I'll try to make it fun today, as heavy as it can be. Anyone out there in Facebook this morning? It's Thursday. It's almost Friday. We've hit another Thursday, almost the end of April. So it's amazing how fast it flies. Here in Arizona, we're hitting 100 degrees now. So my kids have been in the pool every day, and it's you know, we're starting to hit our summer. Hopefully many of you are starting to get some nice weather as well. So just waiting a second. I do see some showing on Instagram. Not sure how we're doing over there on Facebook. If any of you can send me a wave, it's always nice to know you're out there. I welcome you back. I am Dr. Tricia Pingel, and this is your morning checkup. And we're going to be talking about diabetes today. And I have a lot of opinion on diabetes because, first of all, it's a ridiculous epidemic in our country, and it's something that I firmly believe can not only be mostly prevented or prevented in most people, but can also be reversed in many people as well. And that only makes us healthier and stronger and helps us live longer. So those types of topics I'm very passionate about. I also love biochemistry and physiology, so I'm going to have a lot of that in my little talk today, with some fun little pictures and some analogies, and hopefully it isn't too much. But I do think that this is one area of medicine that we don't get a ton of really good education on, okay? Any of you who are diabetic, have been in an office visit, you know, getting diagnosed with diabetes or treated with diabetes, usually there's not a lot of conversation in detail about really what the treatment entails. It's more like a pamphlet being handed out. And it's not enough information, guys. This blood sugar is essential to us living. So there are reasons why we need it, and there's reasons why we can't let it get too high. And so I want to talk more about that today. I want to teach you. I want to teach you more about it because likely you or someone you know is absolutely impacted by blood sugar issues. Now, that could be just simply insulin resistance without actual diabetes. It could be a pre-diabetes state, or it could be diabetes. Now, I do want to clarify that today I'm mostly focusing on type 2 diabetes. However, and I'll talk about the differences, but however, a lot of the treatments and the physiology and stuff that I will be discussing still plays a role in type 1. It's just that type 1 doesn't have that insulin, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference, but as far as like maintaining with diet, stress response, the impact of stress on blood sugar, all of that goes across the board, okay? So, piggy's up. So anyway, I want to dive in. Cool? I see a lot of you out there. Hello, hello, hello. There we have some people over in Facebook. Good morning. Once again, I'm Dr. Tricia Pingel. So first of all, I just want to tell you really the general difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Both are impacts with blood sugar, okay? Type 1, though, doesn't have insulin to assist. Okay, it's an lack of insulin, where type 2 typically has insulin, and it will become resistant. So insulin levels will be higher in a type 2 diabetic as it moves forward, and obviously those that don't make insulin have no insulin. Now, a type 2 can become insulin dependent, okay? If their pancreas burns out from long-term insulin resistance, they eventually need insulin as well. So it used to be thought that type 1 was simply the autoimmune, you know, you're born with it. Not necessarily. Nowadays, with such a high incidence of type 2 diabetes, now we're seeing type 1 diabetes develop later in life as well. So we're going to focus mostly on type 2, okay? But there'll be some tidbits in there for you type 1s, I swear, okay? Stress has an impact on both because stress has an impact on your blood sugar, okay? So I want to talk to you about how we can prevent or pay closer attention to the diabetes process, how we can improve treatment, and my opinion on the things that are being missed here, okay? So, first of all, my biggest concern with diabetes is that it's a silent killer. Okay, it's silent. So, for example, right now we have people dying of COVID, okay? So they get the infection, and if it hits a particular host, they, you know, could pass in a matter of days. Okay, so we get reported every single day of deaths happening due to a virus, and that's very scary. Diabetes, when you get diagnosed with diabetes, it's not an immediate death. Okay, so it's just as serious, guys, because what happens with diabetes over time is it makes you more susceptible to things like COVID. In fact, I know here in Arizona, most of the hospitalizations right now are men in their 40s and 50s, and almost exclusively diabetic, obese, and cardiovascular disease. Okay, now, hopefully they'll recover. They haven't passed at this point, but it's complicating, right? If they didn't have those underlying issues, they might be at home recovering. So this is a very, very important preventative disease, okay? And we have numerous deaths every day from something complicated by diabetes. Almost all of our type 2 diabetes cases over time become cardiovascular cases. Lots of inflammatory problems, poor immune system, side effects that are physically disabling, okay? So it's a very slow process, and that doesn't make it less dangerous, okay? It may not be fast, you may not get diagnosed like you would with cancer and be gone soon, but it will absolutely open you up to more disease. And that's why this is something, as a primary care physician and as somebody that works in preventative medicine, I'm so passionate about, okay? Because we can prevent this. We don't have to have this process. We don't have to have all these people with diabetes. We just don't, okay? So just to give you some clear numbers, this is from the CDC, okay? I believe these are actually 2020 stats or 2019 stats, which is pretty amazing for the CDC. They're usually a couple years behind. But it is estimated that 34.2 million people have diabetes in the United States alone. 34 million people, okay? Just every day we're looking at numbers. Hey, we have 1,000 more cases. We have 2,000 more cases. 34 million people. People, that's a lot, okay? 1 in 5 people don't even know they have diabetes. It's estimated, okay? This is about 1 in every 10 people. So once we're able to gather and get together again in the future, hopefully soon, but you know, we'll all modify, and we have a party, you have a Christmas party and you have 20 people there, 2 people there likely have diabetes or some sort of diabetes process. That's pretty crazy, okay? Now, even more alarmingly, guys, I just said about 34 million with diabetes. It's estimated that 88 million have pre-diabetes. Okay? Piggy. Piggy's making noise. She's trying to go out the door. Not a good time for a dog to go outside. Come here, Piggy. 88 million. That's 1 in 3. Okay? So now you just had 5 people over, right? And 1 of them likely has pre-diabetes. That's huge. Okay? 8 in 10 people don't even know they have pre-diabetes. Whether they don't go to the doctor, whether their doctor doesn't really focus in on that, whether they don't have the education, we don't know, but they don't even know that they have it, okay? This is a huge epidemic. It is approximated $327 billion in total medical costs and lost work and wages for people with diagnosed diabetes, okay? Risk of early death in adults with diabetes is 60% higher than those without diabetes, okay? But like I said, it's a silent killer. It doesn't kill you right away, right? So people don't always think about it. They're like, oh, I'll just take the medication, I'll watch what I eat, and I'm good. Not necessarily, and that's what I want to get into. The medical costs are twice as high in those with diabetes than those without, okay? These are all big facts, right? Yeah. Now, I will say there's the type 1 and the type 2. Of these cases I just mentioned, about 5 to 10% of them are type 1. So 90 to 95% of those numbers I just gave you are type 2 diabetes and increasing rapidly in children. Okay, that's a problem because the longer you have diabetes process, the more inflammation and the more disease. So it's one thing if somebody starts at, you know, gets diagnosed at 65 versus someone who gets diagnosed at 8 years old, right? They've just significantly shortened their lifespan, okay? And that is not okay with me. As a mother, kids need to live a long life. We need to use what we know to teach them how to eat right, how to stay healthy, so that they can have a long and fulfilling life, right? So huge. There are, let's see, 1.5 million 18 years or older are diagnosed with diabetes in 2018. they're saying that approximately 6,000 youth, so that would be under 18, are diagnosed per year with diabetes. Okay? Not cool. Okay, so these numbers are scary. They scare me. Okay? So the problem is that the treatment misses a lot of the potential complications that can happen. So the treatment monitors the blood sugar, but it can cause more side effects. Some of those side effects being neuropathy, inflammation, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, cancer development, poor immune function. All of these things are related to not only diabetes itself, but also to the treatment of diabetes if not done correctly. Okay, and like I said, there's not enough education out there that really teaches people what it means to eat when you're diabetic. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Sound cool? Yeah. All right. So the main things that I think are being missed in the treatment of diabetes is kind of what I'm going to go into some physiology on. But number one, it's missing stress. It's missing the impact of adrenal fatigue and stress on the blood sugar. None of the therapies out there by the American Medical Association address this issue. They may say, try to reduce your stress, and that's about the extent. That's the extent of it. There's no conversation about it. There's no prescription for it. But the bottom line is, when you are running from a bear, when you are under stress, you impact your blood sugar. It's the only way you can get away from that bear, folks. So if you're under chronic stress, your blood sugar is going to constantly be rising up in order to get you away from that bear. This is a huge part of diabetes therapy that is 100% missed, in my opinion, by most therapies. Okay? So we need to talk about that, the physiology of that and how that works. And we need to put it into context for what we do when we treat diabetes, okay? A lot of the treatment of diabetes focuses on improving your diet, but it doesn't tell you how. It's just this general guideline. And I want to talk more about that and some of the foods that they're recommending and how that just doesn't work. I see that a lot of you are commenting on like artificial sugars, these diabetic foods that are full of a bunch of chemicals and junk. 100% agree. But in all fairness to the patients out there, where's the education? How are you supposed to know? If your doctor says, hey, this is the diet plan I recommend, I want you to take this shake every day, they're not necessarily questioning what's in the shake, right? And that's not the patient's fault, okay? It's the doctor's fault, because we should be looking at these therapies, we should be educating on these therapies, and then we should let the patient decide what's the best course of action based on education. That is not happening so much in diabetes. There's a lot written on it, but it's a lot of fluff. There's not a lot of real content in there, right? Do you guys agree? I mean, I know you guys don't want to admit to who's diabetic out there. I know that many of you are. 8 in 10 of you may not even know it. But there's not a lot of really solid, concrete education, okay? So let's change that. I'll give you some insight to that. Exercise, same thing. No real guideline on exercise. It's like, exercise more and you'll improve diabetes. Number one, why? And number two, how? Okay? And with the vast range of people in the diabetic arena, could be anything from being people that are of normal body weight to people being morbidly obese to people that have comorbid conditions. So the type of exercise may have to be different amongst those people as well, right? So to just give this general, hey, just get outside and walk 15 minutes a day is not enough. And it's not giving that individualized treatment to the people that need it, okay? And that is really, really important to me as a physician. I want people to know what they can do, okay? Because these general guidelines do not help, right? Am I right? Okay. And the other thing I want to talk about, which you may or may not know, is I want to talk about the medications that are used to treat diabetes and the nutrient depletion that comes from them. The side effects of the medications oftentimes are from nutrient depletion. There are ways to work integratively, replenish nutrients, eat the right foods, and use medications if needed in severe cases to avoid a lot of the common side effects that you see. This is also not being looked at. So I want to talk about that, okay? And those come to things like B vitamins and minerals, things that are essential for blood sugar management in the first place. Okay, so we get caught in all these major diseases in our country, particularly, we get caught in like this cycle of I call it the hamster wheel. We just get caught in this cycle where the treatment causes just as much stress on the body as the original cause, and then we can't get out of it, right? And then, you know, a virus like this comes along and these poor people, you know what I mean? Thank you. I know I'm ranting, but I'm passionate. You know what I mean? It kills me because there's so many people we could save just with education alone, right? It drives me nuts. So anyway, let's talk about it. Sound good? All right. Well, I'm getting a lot of loves and hearts on Instagram. Thank you. Over there on Facebook, a few little comments here and there. Hopefully I'm not scaring you off. So I want to talk about a few different things. First of all, you know, glucose is a basic building block and a basic breakdown product of carbohydrates, okay? And we need it. This whole, we need to have no carbs in our diet, not necessarily, especially if you're under stress. If you see a bear and you need to run, breakdown of fat and protein aren't going to do it, folks, okay? You need glucose like now. So there is a difference in carbohydrate requirement between somebody who's under a ton of stress and somebody who isn't, okay? Most of us are under more stress than we should be. And simply from this silly little thing I'm talking on right now, which is my cell phone, okay? It causes a lot of stress. It causes a lot of need for glucose, okay? Glucose is essential to our body. We need it for our brain, okay, and we need it to produce ATP, which is our energy. Now, we can also get energy from fats and proteins, and that's very important. And in times of low stress, that's how we prefer to do it. And that's where a lot of these diets are generated from, is to focus more on breaking down proteins and fats rather than blood sugar, rather than carbohydrates for blood sugar. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how glucose and insulin work together, because as you may know, type 2 diabetes is also called metabolic syndrome, or the beginning of insulin starting to rise. And so that process is something that happens earlier in the stage that may be missed. Because you're not screening for it, right? Every year you go in and you have that glucose test and you get a call that says, okay, your glucose is normal. And then one year you get a call, oh, hey, shoot, you know what? By the way, you're pre-diabetic. And you're standing there going, what? Well, last year I was normal, right? This is a process, right? Blood sugar maybe at 85, 88, 90, 92, 95, 98, 99. Oops, now you're at 107. Now you're pre-diabetic. Darn it, now we got to think about putting you on medication. No. We need to be watching that, okay? So I want to talk about how that happens, why this happens over time. How many of you have actually had your insulin checked by your doctor when you're finding that your blood sugars are getting higher? Almost none of you, right? We need to watch insulin levels as well. We need to watch inflammatory markers. We need to talk about this before it happens. We need to get those 88 million people that are in prediabetes, and we need to get to the 8 and 10 people that don't even know they have it. And ideally, we need to get to this in childhood and young adulthood, because these kids are getting diabetes at age 8 or 9. This isn't cool, right? We're setting them up for a horrible, horrible life as an adult if they don't get it under control. We need to focus on that. And for those of you out there that do not have diabetes or pre-diabetes, hopefully this information will be very valuable to you, because if you know what to watch, you can actually prevent it or minimize the impact of it if it occurs, okay? And it's not all about diet. I see many of you are talking about diet and sugar and ice cream and things, and you're right, but it's not all about that, folks. Okay, it's not. There's way more than a diet component. And many people can tell you that they eat a great diet and they're still pre-diabetic, or they eat a great diet and they still have insulin resistance, okay? There's a reason why they're not looking at the stress component and the actual metabolics surrounding blood sugar and insulin, okay? So I have a cool analogy for you. People always enjoy my analogies. Hopefully you enjoy it. And it involves a little piece of paper with some marker here, which is always harder to do. Let's see, one of my cameras is higher than the other, right? There we go. So the way I relate this, and I don't know if this will come through very well. I'm gonna try. So the way that I relate this is to like a, if you can imagine a big city and you have a high-rise building and you have a street, right? And you have a doorman that lets you into the building. You with me? So you have a ton of people in the street, people want in, the doorman opens and closes the door and says, yep, you're allowed in, no, you're not. Okay? So relate this to the way that we work with blood sugar, okay? The building is your cell, okay? And it has a doorman, which is a receptor that opens and closes to let the blood sugar in the street in. So imagine that the sugar, we're gonna call it sugar just for simplicity, but it's glucose, okay? are standing in the street wanting to get into the cell or into the building so that they can produce energy, okay? So we've got here, can you guys all see that? Let's see, hang on a sec. Okay, so here we've got a street full of little glucose molecules, okay? These are the people in the street. Here we've got the building, which is the cell, and we've got a little receptor sticking off of it with an eye by it. The eye is your insulin. He is the doorman, okay? So when glucose goes in, it goes through the door, the insulin says, hey, come on in, you know, and it produces energy. And ideally it's broken down, removed, and that's the end of it. And we've ran from the bear, or we've got the quick glucose we need for our brain, okay? So why would we get more glucose in the blood? Now, let me keep in mind, just reminding you, because sometimes people forget this, when you check blood glucose in your annual labs, you're checking glucose in the blood, okay? You're checking what's floating around in the blood. So you're checking what's in the street. You're not checking what's in the cell, okay? So you're looking at how many people are loitering or how many people are just standing around the street crowding it, right? The more people that are sitting in the street and not going into the building, the higher your blood sugar. Okay, so there are two ways that people can get into the street. In general, one, food, okay, depending on what you eat. All of us need glucose. Just reminding you, we all need it, okay? You can't be glucose free or you will have no brain function. Not good, okay? So we eat. The other way is from our liver. That's right, our liver. So let's say that you're running from a bear and you haven't had breakfast. Let's say you're somebody that skips breakfast regularly, but you're under a ton of stress. So you're running from a bear, the liver has to put more people into the street. So that's the liver's job. If the liver does that too often, the liver becomes inflamed. If the liver becomes inflamed, we have more problems, more disease development, more issues. I did talk about the liver in a recent live, and I'm going to talk more about it here because the liver plays a huge role in blood sugar management, and it goes hand in hand with stress response. Right, guys? You with me? All right. So those are two ways that we can get more sugar into the street. So what can start to happen if you get more sugar in the street, okay? A couple things happen. One, you have more trying to cram into the building, right? Which doesn't necessarily help. You can only fit so many people in the building, right? So a lot of people are left in the street. They're denied access. The other thing that happens is, I like to describe it in this way, and for any of you that are doctors, you know, there's a lot more specifics to this, but if you could imagine that door getting sticky, like there's a bunch of sugar getting sticky around it, like almost like glue. And the insulin goes to open it, and he's like pulling on it, and he can't get it open. And he's like, geez, the door won't open as far as it should. And then the glucose can't get in. So he calls on his buddy down the street, another doorman, to come in and help him. And now they're both pulling on the door. And that continues to happen with all of the receptors, and you end up with double the amount of insulin than you had in the first place. So that's where insulin resistance starts to happen. You require more insulin to get that sugar into the cell because you have too many people in the street. Okay? Too many people in the street, not enough people in the building. Remember that our body is very simplistic in that respect. It wants sugar for energy. So if you have a ton of sugar sitting around, it wants to get it into the cell to use it for energy, and it can't do that without more insulin, okay? And that's where insulin resistance starts to happen. Those doors get sticky, blood sugar has a hard time going in and out of the street, and if you continue with tons of stress calling on the liver, or you have, you know, inappropriate diet that's putting large amounts of sugar, you're putting more strain on that cell, okay? You put more strain on that cell, we have problems, okay? So hopefully that's making sense. This is basically the process of type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and insulin resistance in a very simplistic metaphor, okay? So on that point, the major drug that is used for type 2 diabetes is Metformin, right? Which essentially goes in and works on the insulin at the door. So it's trying to open up the doors more. It's trying to reduce the insulin resistance. The problem is Metformin also has a ridiculous number of side effects, many of which are depletion of more vitamins. So let's go back to some of the times I've talked about the nutrient deficiencies that arise from stress. Number one, I've always said, is B vitamins, right? B5, B6, B12, activated folate, methylated folate, all of which are very involved in the cardiovascular system. They're involved in blood pressure management. They're involved in inflammatory pathways. They're involved in detoxification. They're involved in hormone regulation, and they're involved in blood sugar. So if you're deficient in B vitamins, That is very stressful on the body, not simply because of the blood sugar aspect, but because it's impacting all these other pathways as well. When the body is stressed and it can't get what it needs, it inflames. Okay? When it inflames, we have more problems. Okay, just in general. Now, considering the overlap between diabetes and cardiovascular disease, this is a huge point. Okay, so metformin, it is known that it depletes B12. Okay, and many of you, maybe your doctor has said, okay, just take B12 with it. The problem is not all B12s are the same. You're given something called cyanocobalamin, which needs to be converted by the liver into methylated B12. So you need to be taking methylated B12, but B12 can't be given by itself without considering all the others, B5, B6, and methylated folate. There is a condition out there, which I will do a live on, called MTHFR, which has an issue with converting folic acid into methylated folate. A lot of us have this, so we have a deficiency in methylated vitamins. When that happens, the liver gets bogged down. When the liver gets bogged down and inflamed, I bet you can guess that probably impacts your metabolism and your production of glucose, right? All related, folks. You got to look at the nutrition deficiencies of stress. You've got to look at the nutrition deficiencies of treatment, and you have to look at the nutrition deficiencies of the actual disease process, and you have to support those. That is lacking, right? That is lacking. I was at the AMA's website. I'm going to go through some of the stuff there. Nothing against the AMA, because there's many wonderful things that they do, okay? I'm not trying to bash people. There is an absolute place for that medicine. But when it comes to a preventable disease that occurs over time, that's the arena that someone like me steps in, okay? That's when I can go in, replenish the nutrients, support the body, and prevent it or slow it from happening. So this is kind of my arena, okay? So very, very, very important. So the side effects of metformin can actually cause more neuropathy, more hypertension, more cholesterol problems, more inflammation, poor liver detoxification, and poor immune system. Okay, so then when something like this virus comes along, the poor body, I mean, man, your body has to work hundreds of times more than someone who doesn't have this disease process. So diabetes just makes the body work harder. It keeps it under a chronic stressed state, okay? And anytime you're in a chronic stress state, your repair functions, your cellular repair, your liver detoxification, the maintenance of your blood cells, all these things that keep us healthy are downregulated because the body's under stress. Diabetes is very, very, very stressful. Okay, so should I take a breath? You guys catching up with me? It's fun though, right? Like, I'm sorry, this is cool. Isn't it cool? Our body knows what to do. Our body is adapting to what we're doing. We're putting it under stress and our body is adapting. That is fascinating. But it's also to our detriment if we don't pay attention to that adaptation. We have to pay attention to the adaptation. The treatment for diabetes now is different than it was 30 years ago because we are adapting to our new environment every single day. And every time we adapt, our biochemistry changes because our bodies are awesome, okay? Survival of the fittest. Right? We adapt to survive. So if we're going to continue to give this constant stimulation and this constant stress response, we're going to continue to see more diabetes development. And from that diabetes development, guys, it is oh my God, the diseases that come out of that are insane, right? Let's go to the source. Okay, let's treat stress response. Let's look at the mechanisms of blood sugar and incorporate that into the treatment. So I have a few tabs here that I need to pull up. Okay, making sure I know where my tabs are. Okay, so we talked about all these vast numbers of diabetes, which are alarming to me. So let's talk a little bit. We talked about the liver a little bit and stress links to the liver. And you always have to remember that if the liver isn't working well, you're going to have inflammation. So liver support is always critical, in my opinion, in the treatment of diabetes and something that is very not recommended, you know, outside of diet and exercise. So let's talk about what is recommended, okay? Number one, diet, right? Everyone pretty much could say, if I said, how do you treat diabetes? Everyone would say, oh, well, you need to eat better. True. But what is better? Okay, so when I go to, I've been looking like at the ADA, looking at all of these, on Facebook, Instagram's back. Sorry about that, guys. I lost connection with you, Instagram, but I promise I'll be posting this after, okay? So when I look at all of these websites for recommendations of diet of diabetes, I think most people agree. They say, okay, low carbohydrate, focus more on proteins and healthy fats. Okay, but what does that mean? Okay, number one, we do need carbohydrates. So just substituting with chemical-based sugars is not the answer. Okay, we do need carbohydrates. It's just the balance between them. And what exactly is a protein? Most, and I don't mean to classify, guys, just to say, because I have many diabetics who are very much in tune with this, okay, who are awesome and they eat the right diet. So I don't want to classify and say that all are the same, but I want to point out some of the things I've seen where once I've educated somebody, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. That is the way I eat and I need to fix it, okay? What I mostly see is people ordering a big steak with a side of potatoes and maybe a broccoli or like an asparagus, okay? So what are we getting out of that? Yes, we're getting a lot of protein, okay? We are also getting carbohydrates in potatoes, folks. It's not simply sugar. I personally know diabetics that say, oh, I don't eat sugar. And then when they order, they're ordering, bread on their sandwich, or they're ordering pasta, or they're ordering, potatoes, or, there's a whole ton of things that or they're eating cereal for breakfast or something like that. They're getting carbohydrate and there's nothing wrong with that, but it needs to be recognized, okay? Carbohydrate comes in many forms. Carbohydrates also come from vegetables. So you can get a good, healthy dose of carbohydrate that will go straight to the brain and help you with function by utilizing more vegetables as your carbohydrate source, as opposed to starches and other types of products, even like brown rice and things like that. Butternut squash, for example, has a huge carbohydrate load, but it also has a great amount of fiber, has a ton of antioxidants, replenishes nutrients, right? So those types of things are incredibly important to look at on the plate. My problem is when we're focusing on protein, the standard American diet says, oh, that must be red meat, okay? Look, people, protein comes in so much more. I get my protein from lentils, I get them from beans, I get them from nuts, I get it from seeds, I get it from quinoa, I get it from tahini, I get it from all these plant-based sources, right? The plant-based sources give me the protein, but also give me the healthy fats. They give me the satiety, to eat those without, having blood sugar crashes. Also gives me a huge nutrient level, lots of minerals, okay? So the plates need to be focused on plants. And if you're adding protein to it, that's fine, but let's look at the source of protein here. If we're doing red meat, it has been proven that high doses of red meat, I'm just talking general, can cause a lot of inflammation, especially in someone that's already inflamed. Well, I've already told you that diabetes is an inflammatory process, so you have to watch that meat, okay? Now, if you're occasionally doing a game meat or you're occasionally doing a grass-fed steak or something on a special occasion, that's one thing. But having it on your plate as the primary thing, like if I don't think I have a plate or anything similar, but if you have a round plate and half of it is meat, we've got a problem here. We need it to be 75% plant-based. Now, those plants could be anything from carbohydrate to protein to fat, depending on what your individual needs are. We need to look more at plants in the treatment of diabetes. When I go to the website, and I'm sorry, American Diabetes Association, but I'm gonna point some things out here. And I look at the featured recipes on the site. Here is the types of things I see. Quick Italian meatloaf. And they have a couple, looks like they serve it with a small amount of salsa and a couple little cherry tomatoes. Okay, budget-friendly herb garlic meatloaf. Okay, and then we've got meat lovers breakfast cups. Okay, which is eggs, meat, and cheese. Okay, and then they put a strawberry next to it. Okay, no bake peanut butter and chocolate bites. Beef stroganoff. That's all noodles and beef with a dairy-based sauce. Okay, tell me where the nutrition is, folks. Outside of protein, what are you getting out of that? So I always say, when you eat something and you put it in your mouth, what are you getting out of it? What's the macronutrient? What's the micronutrient? If all you can say is carbohydrate and protein and fat, that's not good enough. I want to see zinc. I want to see magnesium. I want to see vitamin A. I want to see antioxidants. I want to see things that protect your immune system, that lower inflammation, right? very important, particularly in people under stress. You don't digest your food as well. So replacing some of those nutrients is key in diabetes as well. Now, granted, in their defense, there's a couple recipes on there that I actually am a little bit okay with. And that is, cauliflower fried rice. It's fried, but it is cauliflower, right? Asian chicken salad. But tell me, how many of you, when you go to the diabetes website and you see an option of meat lovers breakfast cups, no bake peanut butter bites, beef stroganoff meatloaf, and then you see bell pepper poppers, which one are you going to pick realistically, right? You're going to pick the comfort food, the food that us Americans were raised on, and that's a problem. There are no sides here. There's no vegetables here, folks. We need vegetables, okay? So, and in defense of doctors and whatnot, we don't really always have enough time. I have a ton of time because I run a different type of practice. I spend approximately 45 minutes to 60 minutes with my patient each time. Most doctors have 10 minutes, okay? So it's hard to educate, which is fine, but it means that they need to direct you to a resource that's helpful, and the main resource for diabetes is very confusing, okay? It has things like strawberry lemon cheesecake and chocolate walnut mug cake on it. What? I feel for you guys. How are you supposed to know what to eat? Right? Okay, so there's a lot of problems in our diet. Now, I did put on my website, I have an article on diabetes that talks about Mediterranean diet and the benefits of a Mediterranean diet to diabetes. There's a lot of research on this. There's like 80% reduction in diabetes processes by a Mediterranean diet. Now, Mediterranean diet does allow some meats if you're a meat person, but it looks more towards lean meats and, fish and, using other, it increases a lot of vegetables, okay? It adds a lot of vegetables into the mix, which is very, very, very important. 75% of your plate should be from a plant. Use a variety. I mean, I'm someone who I have like 6 different plants on my plate every night. And my husband does the same thing, and he adds meat occasionally. But the meat should not be the primary focus. I always say make the meat the side dish and make the plants the main dish. Okay, so you'd almost be better off going to vegan websites and plant-based websites and finding recipes that speak to you and then adding a little bit of chicken to it, because you would get more nutrient-dense food. This is about nutrient density. Diabetes and the medications from diabetes deplete nutrients. B vitamins, minerals. Minerals are a huge issue in diabetes and pre-diabetics and insulin resistance. By the way, when I say insulin resistance, this also ties into hormones, okay? And that brings in polycystic ovarian syndrome. So for some of you that maybe have been diagnosed with a hormone irregularity, it can actually be treated the same way by treating it with a diabetic type lifestyle, okay? And that's the primary way I treat PCOS. I look at the hormones, but I also look at the insulin, and the insulin needs to be treated. Like I said earlier, how many of you actually have had your insulin checked? It's gonna be silence, not a lot. So food, major problem. Okay, we need to look more at incorporating nutrient foods. Exercise, same problem. I went to the website and looked at what are the guidelines for exercise, and they said something like 5 to 10 minutes of a light warm-up, like walking, and then 5 to 10 minutes of stretching, and then 5 to 10 minutes of cooling down. Okay, now, in somebody who is, has a situation where they're older and maybe they're obese, that may bring their heart rate up enough in the beginning to actually make an impact. Now, somebody in the pre-diabetic scenario or somebody that does have the ability to exercise, that's gonna do nothing. Okay, so by giving that advice, it's not necessarily helping those people. The bottom line is you have to burn calories. You have to have a metabolic response. Now, based on your underlying health, that amount of exercise may differ. So here's my point. Number one, you start by incorporating exercise that builds up your heart rate. Okay, so even if it's starting at 10 minutes a day or it's starting at 30 minutes a day, depending on where your health is, and then you need to increase. You need to move forward. You can't just stay there at that level forever, because if you're doing it every day, you will be able to handle longer periods, and you have to be able to push yourself forward a little bit. Now, some of you have to go slower than others, okay? And that's fine, totally fine. Right? This is a long process. This isn't an overnight healing process, but you have to work on incorporating the exercise. There was something, where they were saying that the ultimate goal is to work at a 50 to 80% capacity 3 to 4 times a week for 30 to 60 minutes. Now that I agree with. You're gonna need at least 3 to 4 days a week of exertion for approximately 30 to 60 minutes each time. You won't get anywhere unless you're doing that. So if you're just going out and walking for 10 minutes of a day and that's all you can do, that's fine. But then the next week it needs to go up to 15 minutes. You know, there needs to be you need to graduate, you know, and you need to keep moving forward, right? This is what this is all about. Cleaning up your diet. It's real easy for me to say, fill it with plants. Many of you have never done that before, okay? And that's cool, but just try. Every week, incorporate a new plant. Make your plate a little bit more plant heavy, you know? Start thinking about, what am I actually putting into my body? How many chemicals am I putting into my body? You know, a lot of people are referred to weight loss plans when they're diabetic with shakes that are full of a bunch of junk, or they're referred to, you know, frozen meal plans. And those meal plans are full of a bunch of artificial colors and sugars. So start looking at what you're eating, start paying attention to it, and make weekly goals to do that. It's not as hard as it seems, even though it seems very daunting in the beginning, okay? And I get that. I do. I've gone through a lot of things in my life that I've had to slowly just chip away at, and everybody's human, but you have to keep moving forward. We can't just sit here and do the same thing every single day. We have to grow, we have to evolve, okay? Now, on the lines of nutrient support and stuff, that's really something that I wanna open your eyes to. So I wanna make sure I allow time for that. So I'm gonna kind of fly through this. But I had talked about medications and nutrient depletion, which is very important. Always important to be taking a high quality mineral, okay? Always important to be taking a high quality methylated B vitamin supplement, okay? I will do a live, I promise you. I actually was gonna do it today on B vitamins, but I wanted to introduce with this topic before I did. So I will put it on the schedule next week, maybe tomorrow. I'm actually gonna do it a little bit later tomorrow, but I promise I'll come more into methylation and B vitamins, what matters. I have that on an upcoming live, okay? So, and I do have an article on that on my website if you're impatient, like me. A lot of these side effects from metformin, okay, besides nutrient deficiency, and these are common, okay, physical weakness, diarrhea, gas, muscle pain, upper respiratory tract infection. Let me just point that out because of our current times, upper respiratory tract infection, abdominal pain, low levels of B12, nausea, vomiting, chest discomfort, chills, dizziness, constipation, and heartburn. Oh, okay. Or we could look for maybe some other options that are more than simply diet and exercise, although those are huge. So diet and exercise are in the protocol, folks. It has to happen, okay? You can do all the natural therapies and all the medications you want. If you're not eating right and you're not exercising, it's ultimately not gonna go any further. You might halt it where it's at with some of these medications, but you're not gonna improve. Okay, this is a holistic viewpoint. If you wanna get rid of diabetes or you wanna prevent diabetes, you have to commit to it 100% from all aspects, okay? Stress reduction, diet, exercise, nutrient support, and reversing the actual process of diabetes. So that's what I wanna talk about. Other than using metformin, although if it's really bad, you may have to use metformin right now, and then you start incorporating some of these other things, and hopefully that can go down over time, okay? Never stop a medication without your doctor's approval, and never just stop one because you like what I have to say, okay? This is so involved. I just wanna educate you so that you can ask the right questions to your doctor at the right time, okay? So, what I use a lot in pre-diabetics, insulin resistance, polycystic ovarian syndrome, diabetes is a amino acid called, an antioxidant called alpha lipoic acid. Now, I don't know if many of you have heard of that. There are numerous studies on alpha lipoic acid and its impact on diabetes. Many people never hear about it. That's my beef. You should at least hear about it. Whether you choose to take it, whether you want to believe what you read or not, the decision you make is yours, okay? But you should hear about it. That's my problem with diabetes management. You should be educated, okay? So alpha lipoic acid basically is a substance that does numerous things, okay? In regards to insulin, it acts very similar to metformin, and then it goes in and it cleans out all those little insulin receptor sites, okay? Which is great. So it can have the same impact of metformin, but it does not have the side effects of metformin, and it also does not deplete the nutrients. Actually, it improves your nutrient status. So not only does it help with insulin resistance, it's also a very potent antioxidant, okay? So it regenerates other antioxidants, okay? And I'm quoting all of this, by the way, from a PubMed article. There are so many PubMed peer-reviewed articles on alpha-lipoic acid and diabetes. So I just picked one today, and I'm pulling this data from that, okay? I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere, okay? So antioxidant effect, regeneration of other antioxidants, regeneration or reparation of oxidized proteins. So it actually will kill free radicals, improve the immune system, improve your overall antioxidants. That's important when it comes to cancer development. Okay, that's important when it comes to heart disease, when you're killing off heart cells, you know, you're killing off muscle cells, anything where cells are dying, where you're not getting cellular repair, alpha-lipoic acid will benefit, okay, on top of helping with the insulin issue. Okay, it also is very good at removing toxins and metal toxins in particular. It supports the liver. It supports liver detoxification. In fact, it also helps clear out excessive hormones. So in people with polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's a multifaceted issue. It's an issue of insulin resistance often, or developing insulin resistance, but it's also an issue with stored estrogens, high store levels of estrogens, testosterone, and DHEA. So if you're using a substance that not only helps the insulin, but also helps clear those excess hormones, that's a win-win. And on top of it, it's preventing you from further cellular decline, right? But that's not it. It does more. I know, can you believe it? One substance, okay? So it's an anti-inflammatory. It inhibits inflammatory response, disease development, inflammatory response. I won't go into all the details of which ones it inhibits because you guys can read up on that. But it does. It also improves glucose metabolism, and I've already told you why. It also has been shown to improve cholesterol, okay, which is a big problem in diabetes, okay? So most of them have used 600 milligrams IV. I've used it orally, and I use higher dose orally. So let me come back to that. But anyway, for 2 weeks, they would find benefits in fasting and average glucose, insulin sensitivity, plus beneficial impacts on LDL, HDL, and total cholesterol. Okay. Other studies have said that the administration for 10 days resulted in a 50% decrease this was in an animal study where they did it on mice. When they gave alpha-lipoic acid for 10 days, it resulted in a 50% decrease in the number of mice that actually developed diabetes. 10 days, right? There were a couple other 107 diabetic patients. Those that took alpha-lipoic acid had decreased oxidative stress compared with those that didn't. So when we're looking at why is diabetes a silent killer, it's because of the oxidative stress it causes on the body, the inflammation and the damage to the cells, and then all the other conditions that opens the door to, okay? That's what makes you more susceptible to respiratory disease. That's what makes you more susceptible to cardiovascular disease. That would make you more susceptible to obesity, cancer. If you look at the overlap, you will see that, okay? So this is something that can be reversed. Something as simple as looking at how many antioxidants you're eating. Now, alpha-lipoic acid is also found in foods, okay? There are some found in meats, so I know some of you are going to point that out, but they are also found in broccoli. Most of our cruciferous vegetables primarily, they had a list, but it's mostly like, you know, broccoli, cauliflower, you know, types of greens, dark greens. The beauty of also dark greens is they are liver supportive, so they help clear the liver. They have a ton of minerals, magnesium, potassium, you know, all of these things that help balance out those sodium levels, which are very prevalently high in diabetics. I'm not going to go into why. For any of you that want to know on that particular aspect, I'd have to do another live, but I also detail it in my book, Total Health Turnaround. I have a whole chapter on diabetes, okay? And it talks about how the minerals become imbalanced in diabetes and why a lot of that ends up in a sodium dominant state, which then of course raises high blood pressure. Compound that with the decrease in B vitamins, and you're also going to have an increase in high blood pressure and an increase in inflammatory markers. Nutrition is key, okay? and I know I've said this even, I keep coming back to coronavirus, and I apologize. I mean, you guys are going to come back and look at this maybe in a year and it won't be relevant. I don't know. But a lot of the detriment is coming from what they're finding a lot of nutrient deficiencies, okay? A nutrient-rich body has a good immune system. A good immune system is essential in times like this. So whatever you get out of this process, no matter what we come out of this, I just hope all of you are going to take a moment to just look at what you eat, look at your lifestyle, look at the ways that you could prevent this from being such a tragedy in the future, right? If even 10% of the population improves their health, that's less death if something like this comes along again. And that is very, very, very important, right? Because as you're learning, once it hits, there's not a lot you can do after the fact. There's things you can do, of course, and we're doing them, but it's a lot harder once it hits. We need to prevent and prepare our bodies to be ahead of the game next time. Okay, so let's learn from this. Yes? So alpha lipoic acid, people are asking about where you can get it. Now, first of all, is with any supplement, you need to look at the actual supplement. If you turn it around on the back and you see a bunch of additives in it, not a good one. Alpha lipoic acid really, like if I pull up some of the ones that I have used, typically they're basically alpha lipoic acid and a capsule, okay? They don't have a lot of binders in them. I want to look at the label so I can kind of read it off for you. I use a couple different ones. And then these are all nutraceutical grades. So definitely if you know a naturopath in your area, they'd be able to get them. There are a lot of them available on vitamin sites. Really what I encourage you is to look at the inactive ingredients, okay? The one that I usually prescribe is a vegetarian capsule made of cellulose and water, and it has a little bit of ascorbyl palmitate. And it says on the label, there are no artificial additives, allergens, GMOs, environmental contaminants, or added excipients. Hypoallergenic. You want as clean a capsule as possible. The other problem is finding the dosage. So in many people, and I would not do this without the advice of your doctor because everybody is different, okay? But when you look at the research, you will see that typically they're administering anywhere between 600 and 1,200 milligrams a day on active diabetics. Now, if you're not an active diabetic, you probably could get away with a lot less, particularly if you live a healthy lifestyle and you eat well and you exercise, you may not need it in such an abundance. And for those of you that are very healthy right now, you can get a lot of it through your diet, okay, if you're eating the right things. So everyone starts at a different level, okay? But a lot of the capsules, you can only get 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams per capsule. There are quite a few out there that are 600 milligram per capsule though. So those ones should be fairly clean. Take a look for that, look at the label, and talk to your doctor about using it, particularly if you are on medications for diabetes as well. Sorry, I'm gonna click on something. I defer my eyes from you guys, huh? And then you go, what is she doing over there? So yeah, you may see a little bit of cellulose and you may see a little bit of water in a vegetable capsule. There's no need to add anything else to it. It's kind of like when people add soybean oil to vitamin D. It doesn't make any sense to me. You don't need oil in vitamin D. It's already an oil. Why are we adding more stuff in it? You know, so always look at the purity of your supplements. But that is a great way to incorporate a little bit of antioxidant. Now, I will say, if you're really toxic, alpha lipoic acid can make you feel kind of nauseous. So that's why I want you to talk to your doctor first, okay? Because you might have to go about it a lot slower than the average bear, and that's okay. So the point of today, I'm not here to bash, okay? We all have different areas of medicine that we specialize in, okay? But diabetes is a silent killer, and it is slowly causing more problems over time in more people, okay? It is affecting people at a younger age than it used to. So we are now effectively determining a poor health quality for the younger generations, okay? That's a problem. We need to focus on nutrient-dense food, not simply low carbohydrate food. We need nutrient-dense food. We need to focus on stress response. We need to realize that when we're under stress, we do not digest food well. So we don't get as many nutrients as we need. So if you're somebody that is stuck to their phone, and maybe you have to for your job. Okay, great. I'm a doctor. Like, my phone is on all the time. Now, I make certain regulations. You know, I turn it off at certain times of the day, but it's not like I can completely detach from it. But I to combat that, I take a lot of B vitamins, I take a lot of minerals, I eat a very strict diet, and I definitely get a good amount of exercise. And so I've had to modify that stress response. I've had to spend more time focusing on meditation and calming my body down and recognizing the signs when I'm overstressed, and then doing something about it. Okay, so these are all things that you can do at home that are free. Okay? I mean, cost of food, but I'm saying changing the way that you eat, changing the way you look at life, changing the way you connect, changing your exercise habits, those are all well within your control. Okay? Those are well within your personal control. Nobody can control how much exercise you do. I have people say to me all the time, well, I work too much. My boss won't let me off. I can't do exercise. Well, at some point you go home, folks. So when you go home, make a point of exercising. That is within your control. It's within your control to set boundaries on work. So set those boundaries. Your health is important, okay? So those are things you can do at home. And then incorporating those minerals, incorporating good food into the body, lowering inflammation, all those things absolutely help. I have seen insulin resistance reverse from these types of processes. I have seen blood sugars, especially in pre-diabetics, go back down to normal range. Not only do their metabolics all level back out, like lower liver enzymes, lower cholesterol, lower blood sugar, but they also feel significantly better. And when they start to feel better, they notice better metabolic activity, so they start to notice weight loss, okay? So it's very difficult to start. I don't want to be insensitive to that. I get it. But you got to start somewhere, okay? So hopefully this gave you some education for places to go, for ways to kind of figure out how you can incorporate this into your lifestyle. I know it was a long live. I know it was a lot of information. Tomorrow will be lighter, a little bit more fun, a little bit, not as heavy of a topic. But this is an important topic. So hopefully you all learned something today. I see a ton of requests and a lot of comments. Thank you so much. I love that I'm connecting with all of you, and I love that these topics are of interest to you. So let's start taking a look. Let's use this time to take a look at how we can improve our health so that in the event that this happens, the situation happens again where we have some sort of virus or some sort of infection going around, we are all better protected, okay? So, much love to all of you. Please like, share, visit drpingel.com for more information. I do have Total Health Turnaround, which is a book. I do go into more in depth on how stress impacts diabetes amongst every other disease out there or every other condition out there. And then also, I don't know if many of you know, but I actually have a 30-day program that will help you kind of clean up your diet, focus on stress relieving techniques, those types of things that you can do at home that you don't need to go to the doctor for constantly, little things that you can do, which may seem like not a lot, but as many of you know, it's hard to carve out time to do that. So sometimes having a guide to do that will help. So for those of you it would help, it is available. For those of you that are showing up for my lives and just learning, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. You guys go have a fantastic Thursday, and I will see you tomorrow.